Section 1.4 is about addition. The things that we need to worry about at addition is whether the numbers have the same sign or they have different signs. If they have the same sign, we're just going to add the numbers, like 2 plus 4, we just add the numbers in 6. If it's -2, -4, once again, just add the numbers and keep the sign. So when the numbers have the same sign, just add the numbers and keep the sign. But if the numbers have different signs, I'm going to deal with them over here, -2, +6. If the numbers have different signs, subtract the numbers. So 6 minus 2, subtract the numbers, and keep the sign of the large one. So that's what we're going to call it +4. If I had a 2 plus a -6, once again, different signs, subtract the numbers, and keep the sign of the large one. So an example, let's take a look at an example. -9 plus a -2. They have the same sign. It's a negative sign. I'm just going to add my numbers. 9 plus 2 is 11. Keep the sign. So I'm going to call this -11. Now here, when it comes with fractions, I know for me to add fractions, I must have the same denominator. So 4 and 3, looking at my numbers at the bottom, 4 and 3, they can both fit into 12. So I'm going to get the same denominator as 12. In order for 4 to become 12, I have to multiply by 3. So let me multiply the top by 3 as well. So I'm going to call this -312 plus a negative. Now looking at my second fraction, in order for 3 to become 12, I have to multiply by 4. So multiply the top by 4 as well. 2 times 4 gives me 8. Okay, so now I have the same denominator. I know in fractions, if the denominator is the same, we just copy it. Now I have -3 plus a -8 is the same sign. So I'm just going to add my numbers. 8 plus 3 is 11 and keep the sign. -11 over 12. Same thing with decimals. We know for decimals, let me write them out over here. 2.6 plus 4.7, right? I'm going to add my numbers because they have the same sign. And we know for decimals, we line up the decimal point. I know 6 plus 7 is 13, so write that the 3, carry the 10. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 4 is 7. So I just added my decimals, gives me 7.3, and I keep the sign. So I'm going to call this -7.3. Once again, if they have the same sign, just add the numbers and keep the sign. If they have different signs, it says find each sum, I'm going to subtract the numbers. 12 minus 5, if I go 12 minus 5, gives me 7. Keep the sign of the large number, so my number should be -7. Here, different signs, right? -8, +12. So I'm going to subtract my numbers. 12 minus 8 is 4. Keep the sign of the large one, so +4. Here, 5 over 6. First, let me write this as 5 over 6 plus a -4 over 3. I don't want to mix numbers. I want it as an improper fraction. The way I came out with the 4, because I multiplied these numbers, 1 times 3. I multiply them, and then I added it to the top. So that's how I came out with 4 over 3. So I see the denominator is not the same, but 6 and 3, I can both make it into 6. So my fractions are going to have a 6 at the bottom. Not going to change the first fraction. So 5 over 6 plus a negative, right? In order for 3 to become 6, I have to multiply by 2. So let me multiply the top by 2 as well. So I'm going to call that 8 over 2, 8 over 6. Now, my fractions, I know I must copy the denominator, so 6. My signs are different, so I must subtract my numbers. 8 minus 5 is 3. Keep the sign of the large one, -3 over 6. But we can simplify this as 1 over 2. Remember how when we made my fractions bigger, we multiplied? Remember I said multiply the bottom by 2, so multiply the top by 2 as well. Here, do the same thing. 3 over 6, divide each by 3 to simplify the fraction, so that's 1/2. Now here, to my example D, my numbers are different signs, so I'm going to subtract my numbers. 8.1 minus 4.6. Once again, line up the decimal point. 1 minus 6, I cannot do it, so I'm gonna borrow 1, so that becomes 7, and this becomes 11 because I'm borrowing 1. 11 minus 6 is 5. 7 minus 4 is 3. The big number is positive, so my answer is 3.5. Now here in my examples E and F, right, I said if the signs are different, subtract the numbers. 16 minus 16, right? We're going to subtract 16 minus 16. I know that's 0. And then I said keep the sign of the large number. But here, both numbers are the same thing. You know, neither one is bigger. The absolute value of either one is the same. So there's no such thing as negative zeros. All right, 0 is the only number that does not have a negative of. So we're just going to call that 0. The same thing with my example F. Right? 42 minus 42. I have to subtract my numbers since the signs are different. 42 minus 42 gives me 0. But there's no such thing as a negative 0, so I'm just going to write 0 on that one. Seems like my computer froze for a minute. Oh, there you go. So this is 0, and that's basically how we do this. If the signs are the same, add the numbers, keep the sign. If the signs are different, subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the large number. Now here, we're going to be looking at, remember your order operations, I talked about gems. First thing we got to do is we got to work the groups. So I see a group here. So I'm just going to focus on that one. 4 plus a negative 8, because they have different signs, I have to subtract, keep the sign of the large number. All that becomes negative 4, right? The whole group. So I have negative 3 plus a negative 4, which I'm going to call negative 7. Right? I added the numbers and kept the sign. Same thing on my example B. I'm going to look at the big group first, right? I'm looking at the group. But within the big group, there's even a smaller group. So I have to work that group first. Negative 2 plus 6, right? I'm just worried about the group. Negative 2 plus 6, it's 4 plus a negative 3. Notice I have the plus negative 3. 4 plus a negative 3 is 1. Right? I subtracted them, kept the sign of the large one. So now this thing that I have before the group, 8 plus, let me bring it over here. And then just to finish this, 8 plus 1 is 9. Remember, all I did was I worked the whole group, but within the big group, I had a small group. So I worked the little group first. So the whole thing became 1. So that's why I have 8 plus 1, which I'm just going to call 9. Now here for words, sum of, we're going to talk about addition. The words that we use the sum of is the sum of 3 and 4. If we see this in words, sum of, we know it's addition. We're adding, but I'm going to add negative 3 and I'm going to add 4. Right? I'm writing it the way I see it. Negative 3 was before 8. Now 5 added 2. The word 2, it's an important word, kind of like the word then in my next example. The word 2, it's still addition, but the only thing though is not 5 plus negative 8. The word 2 makes the order switch. So it's negative 8 plus 5. So still addition, but because the word 2 added 2, the order changes. The same thing with more than. More, I know it's still plus, we're still addition, but 12 more than negative 5 is the same thing as negative 5 plus 12, right? The order of the numbers is going to switch. Now, my other cases, don't switch the order. Increase by, so negative 6 increased by 13. My last example, 3 plus 14. So we usually write the numbers in the order we see them. The only time when we switch the order is when we have added to, more than. That's when we switch the order. So let's take a look at this. It says write a numerical expression for each phrase and simplify the expression. So the sum of, so we're dealing with an addition, and I'm adding negative 8, I'm also adding 4, and I'm also adding 6. Right? The sum of negative 8 and 4 and 6. So I'm adding those numbers. So I know, so that's writing it in a numerical expression. Now when it says simplify, it means work it out. So I'm going to work this first two numbers. Negative 8 plus 4, I'm going to call that negative 4. Right? They had different signs, so I subtracted them and kept the sign of the large number. So then negative 4 plus 6, I'm going to call this 2. I subtracted the two numbers and kept the sign of the large number. Now, let me write my example B. Let me write it in numerical expression. 3 more than negative 5, that is negative 5 plus 3. Remember, more than makes me switch the order of the numbers. And this is increased by 12, so I'm just going to write plus 12. So my operations, let me work the first two numbers. Negative 5 plus 3, different signs, so subtract, keep the sign of the large one. So that is negative 2 plus 12. Now here they have different signs, so subtract, keep the sign of the large one. My answer should be 10. Lastly, let's take a look at something like this. A football team gained 3 yards on first down, lost 12 yards on second down, and then gained 13 yards on third down. Find the total net yardage for the plays. So gaining, advancing, we're going to call that as positive. Losing yards, or going back, we're going to call that as negative. So let me read this first. A football team gained 3 yards. So we're going to call this positive 3 on the first down. Then they lost 12 yards on the second down. So let me call that minus 12 because they lost 12 yards. And then they gained 13 yards. So plus 13 on third down. So let me work this out. Positive 3 minus 12, different signs. So, so let me call this is positive 3, this is negative 12. Let me call this negative 9. Then I have a plus 13. Negative 9 plus a 13, I want to call this 4. One thing before I move on. Here, they lost 12 yards. That's basically gaining a negative 12 yards. So that's why I subtracted my numbers, because positive 3, negative 12. That's how I got negative 9 plus 13. And then that's how I got the 4. Okay, good luck with your work.